children of history, man. No purpose or place. We have no Great War, no Great Depression. Our Great War is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives. I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my child! You know what I did? The fucking distract for you! You fucking bitch! You know how to fucking suffer! My arm! My fucking arm! Oh, man! Help us! Somebody fucking help us, please!
Do you ever wish you were never born? I don't mean have you ever felt depressed or told your parents you hate them in an angsty, rebellious rage, but have you ever questioned the idea of existence and wished you had never even come into being? Antinatalism is the philosophical idea that posits that coming into existence is a great harm and reproduction is morally wrong. This belief can sound similar to nihilism or even a symptom of depression, but it stands on its own. This concept has gained a lot of notice in recent years, and the most popular depiction of it in entertainment that I've found is in Rust Cohle from season 1 of True Detective.
I wouldn't go around spouting that shit I was you. People around here don't think that way. I don't think that way.
I think the honorable thing for our species to do is deny our programming. Stop reproducing. Walk hand in hand into extinction.
So why would someone have these thoughts and frame an entire ideology around them? David Benatar is the most predominant advocate for antinatalism, and his book, Better Never to Have Been, is the absolute guide to fully comprehending every aspect of the topic. But I'll be focusing on the topics I find most interesting. So I know there will be several angles or arguments I don't fully cover here, but I'm trying to have this be an entry point to some people who may not know the concept, and for those that support it, to show some examples of it in our entertainment. I don't want that to be thought of as a cop-out. I will stand by points that I do make, but it's unrealistic for me to be able to cover all critiques of this massive taboo subject in one video, but I am open to them. A main tenet of antinatalism is that there is more pain in life than pleasure, so not existing would be better for everyone. Let me show you with this chart. In scenario A, someone existing, I think we can all agree that the presence of pain is bad, while the presence of pleasure is obviously good. In scenario B, with someone who never exists, the absence of pain is a good thing, and the absence of pleasure is not bad, because there is nobody who is deprived of the absent pleasure. This distinction between bad and not bad is where the asymmetry falls in favor of never existing, because in order for someone to feel pleasure, they have to be brought into existence, which inevitably brings pain along with it. So not having pleasure if you do exist is a worse type of bad than the way it is for someone who does not exist. Bad and good in this context are in the absolute best or worst ways in general, because you could argue that the presence of pain in life, like exercising, is ultimately good because of the beneficial outcome, or that the pleasures from food can lead to gluttony and can ultimately be bad for your health. These definitions in the chart are more for senseless or meaningless pain and pleasure that just exist in the nature of life. So, how bad is the pain of coming into existence?
You had me. I used to be nothing. I didn't exist, and I never had a bad day. And then some of you sadists take this to the next level where you say, let's pull that same practical joke on somebody else who doesn't exist.
Everybody, no matter what their circumstances in life, has experienced great pain. Pain of heartbreak, loss of a loved one, horrible damage to their body, or just the mundane hopelessness of working a dead-end job and feeling like you're doing nothing with your life. The inherent reality of living carries the burden of suffering. But I'm satisfied with my life, you may be saying. And if you believe you are, that's great, but I don't necessarily think that's always true. Right off the bat, of course it's impossible for me to know how you truly feel, but I think people will go to great lengths to justify being happy to cope with life. You will always have unfulfilled dreams and constant annoyances that you have to try and overcome daily. And of course, I'm not trying to get you to become dissatisfied with your life, but just examining it. I can imagine the David Goggins of the world telling me you just have to toughen up, get hard, and persevere to find meaning in your life. For someone that already exists, I think that mindset can help you deal with the agony of living. But is the bit of pleasure we have worth the pain of existence? Motivational speakers like him often talk about how much discomfort or torment they can put themselves through. But of course, they wouldn't be doing those things if they didn't see a greater benefit on the other side of the pain. No one chooses to exist, so by being born, you are forced into a position where you have to work endlessly for the rest of your life for any happiness. The paradox is that if you think people should choose for themselves whether or not they're happy with being brought into existence, you first have to bring them into existence without their consent, and by then it's too late.
Do you know the good years when you're in them? Or you just wait for them until you get ass cancer and realize that the good years came and went? Because there's a feeling, you might notice it sometime, this feeling like life has slipped through your fingers. Like the future's behind you, like it's always been behind you.
This monologue from Marty goes on to talk about how his wife and kids are what should have given his life meaning, and he should have been more attentive to them. Why should you force other people into existence to give your own life meaning? Aren't you feeling purposeless and sorrowful? So why would you want to bring that upon someone else needlessly? Without the certainty of a pleasurable and hopeful future, how can you justify bringing more people into existence? Think about this. Do you ever wish there was life on Mars so that more people up there could be experiencing happiness? I doubt that you think the lack of people being able to experience joy on another planet is bad, but I think you would say that there being nobody to experience pain is a good thing.
In my opinion, the existence of life is a highly overrated phenomenon. Just look around you. Mars gets along perfectly well without so much as a microorganism. So tell me, how would all of this be greatly improved by an oil pipeline, by a shopping mall?
What would you give to be happy? What would you be willing to sacrifice in order to live a carefree life? In the short story, The Ones Who Walked Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin, this thought problem is taken to an extreme in a fascinating utopia. It depicts the utopian city of Omelas, where everybody's life is essentially perfect. Nobody gets sick, nobody is in pain, and everyone is always happy. This city has one dark secret. Beneath one of the beautiful buildings, there is a cellar underground with a tiny room with no windows. There is a young child in there, malnourished and alone. They have been tormented in this room their entire life, and have never and will never know anything else. People come to see the child for themselves, but they can do nothing to help them. For if they stop the torture of this child, the perfect life they have above would disappear. So the question is, would you be one of the ones that walks away from Omelas? This short story relates to antinatalism and questioning what society is willing to sacrifice to be happy. People respond to antinatalism by saying, what about the hope for the future? With how innovative technology is progressing, who knows how great life will be one day? So basically what you're doing is bringing new people into existence who you know will suffer in the hope that life will eventually get better. If you have children, your kids are guaranteed to suffer no matter what. I don't think people put enough thought into how serious bringing a new life into existence is. People in poverty, people that don't have the time to give kids enough attention, people that don't have the temperament and will abuse them, or those that just don't have the wisdom to raise children well. These can all be pretty obvious reasons why having a child would be a bad idea. A child's stability and health would be put at immediate risk due to their surroundings and upbringing. But even for children born into loving or financially stable homes, suffering is sure to follow them throughout their life in one form or another. You will watch your children get their hearts broken. constantly worry about them and their well-being, and just be limited in your ability to make them happy, no matter how much you want to or try. I don't want to use extremes as the standard or to fearmonger, but the possibility of birth defects, diseases, and disorders that can emerge is also something that needs to be taken into account. I can't imagine how difficult it is to raise children with disorders that no parent can be equipped to handle. I feel so bad for the added pain and trauma that is inflicted on the individuals and families that are around this. And you don't know what challenges will be inflicted upon your own child.
God forgive me, but I don't get a lot of enjoyment from them. You know, to wait 5 years to hear someone call you mom after daily doing everything for them to keep them safe and give them comfort and provide for them, it's tough, you know?
If you have children, you have to be aware that any horrible news headline, any tragic documentary, any sad family story could be about a child that you have. People often talk about how raising offspring gives their life meaning, and they want to leave something behind and have someone help them when they get old. How evil is it to purposefully cause suffering to someone on the obscene hope that their life won't be that bad, or just so they can help you when you get elderly? Children shouldn't have to be born to solve their parents' problems, and I think it's incredibly selfish and immoral to bring a child into existence to try to give your own life meaning. Your child is now going to have the exact same problem you did, and will just keep the meaningless cycle going.
I think of the hubris it must take to yank a soul out of non-existence into this meat, and to force a life into this thresher. As to my daughter, she spared me the sin of being a father.
One interesting idea that has been put forth by philosopher Hugh Lafayette is the idea that you should need to get a license to become a parent. In a 16-page essay published in 1980 by Princeton University Press, he argues that people who want to have kids should go through a licensing process. In the same way you need a license to drive, be a physician, lawyer, or a therapist, you would have to go through a series of tests and meet certain requirements to be permitted to have a child. He says that this restraint should be required even if it would take away opportunities from people, because the harm of bad parenting is so great. Innocent people must be protected, even if it means that others cannot pursue activities they deem highly desirable. A quick objection to that is that you would be taking away the rights of people. One observation that he makes is, both slander and human sacrifice are prohibited by law. Both could result from the unrestricted exercise of freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Thus, even if people have these rights, they may be sometimes limited in order to protect innocent people. Another obvious objection is how you would even enforce a law like this. What would you do to stop people from trying to reproduce that didn't have licenses? And what would you do with the babies that they have? On page 12, he addresses this in the essay, but from my understanding, it isn't a fully satisfying response. He suggests putting those babies up for adoption, but the financial infrastructure to make that plausible seems unrealistic to me. And for keeping people from procreating, I think society has proven time and time again that that would be impossible to enforce without getting into an Orwellian level of government control. I think Lafayette's response to this is, even though there would be slips in the implementation of the law, the times that it did work would be worth having it in place to begin with. I think that makes sense, but I still question how effective it would be, and I would also be curious what punishments or restrictions would be put forth by a government trying to regulate this law. Because without extremely invasive control, if people knew there was no serious harm to disobeying the law, then why would they follow it? I think some sort of drift in thought by the masses of making licensing a reality is good in theory, but I'm still not convinced how it could be practically implemented.
What's the point of getting out of bed in the morning?
I tell myself I bear witness. The real answer is that it's obviously my programming. And I lack the constitution for suicide.
So, if things won't get better, what do we do next? Do we all just kill ourselves? Epicurus argued that death isn't actually bad for the one that dies, because since they are dead, they don't actually experience it. The experience of dying, of course, can be miserable and traumatic, but if your death doesn't impact anyone around you, then on what basis can you really say it's bad? Because in any continuation of life, and for things to get better and for you to experience more happiness, inevitable suffering is always tethered to you as well. I think the worst aspect of death is the impact it has on those around you, especially if you have children already, or to your significant others. Your absence can really be a burden upon them. So it is painful to continue to exist, but ending your own life also causes suffering. I think people who want to have kids should at least be aware of this trap that they impart upon their offspring. Antinatalism, however, is not a pro-suicide ideology. It focuses on the harm of reproduction, but acknowledges that there are benefits in continuing to exist, and ending your life after already being born can cause considerable sorrow. An analogy Benatar mentions is how life is similar to watching a bad movie. Imagine halfway into a movie, you realize you don't enjoy it very much and consider leaving. By now though, you are already somewhat invested in the characters and the story and just want to see how it ends. If you had known beforehand that it would have been this bad, then you would have never bought a ticket to it. But now that you're here, you might as well make the best of it. From my understanding, this is the way Benatar views existence, and I'm inclined to agree. I do think that there can be a point where life can become so dreadful that suicide can be a logical option for someone, but I am in no way advocating for this among everybody.
For a guy who sees no point in existence, you sure fret about it an awful lot.
It has crossed my mind that maybe I'm taking away the wrong messages from these literally me-type characters, and that I'm missing the point and learning all the wrong lessons. I don't think you have to accept and adopt every aspect of a person's character to find value or wisdom in valid points that they may have. But my contemplation of antinatalism isn't only fueled by depressing film characters suffering through life, but I have looked into the subject in depth and genuinely find the arguments persuading. Personally, I don't like the concept of life. I often feel drained and empty, and the daunting task of always having to try and work for the rest of my life doesn't seem to give my existence purpose. Like I've said, I think there's value in continuing to exist since the damage has already been done, but even if my outlook on life gets exponentially more positive, I don't want to impart this struggle onto my children. I don't want to burden existence onto another innocent being. I also recognize that most people are going to continue to have children. I realize that even if this video, Benatar's book, or some other content convince some people that antinatalism is what's right, that will only stop a minute amount of extra suffering from being brought into the world. But if I want to live morally, I believe that doing my part to prevent suffering is the ethical thing to do.
Fuck me in the front, potato. We'll watch it fall out all terrified and confused, and we'll laugh at it for as long as that joke stays fresh.